Hello, welcome. Welcome. This is the global community for adult survivors of complex trauma. And if you are an adult and you're living with CPTSD symptoms as a result of being
Meet Matchwell, the revolutionary
oh,
online marketplace that
hey.
transforms flex work
I
forever.
wonder what that is.
Matchwell connects
I
pre-qualified
have a
clinicians
browser
to fill your
open.
open shifts.
Hold on. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can find. There's like a browser that I must be in, and there is an ad playing. Interesting. Sorry about that. So, if you're an adult and you're living with CPTSD symptoms as a result of some sort of we are live, Jeffrey Sherman. We are live. Only I didn't anticipate there was some sort of like ad playing. That's interesting. Anyway, so if you're an adult and you're living with CPTSD symptoms as a result of abuse or trauma, um, and your abuse or trauma happened a long time ago, maybe in childhood, but you're an adult and you're still struggling, then you're in the right place. And we're gonna talk about emotional flashbacks that we have present day and what is an emotional flashback. And I'll give you a link to a helpful article on psychology. Is it psychology.net, or no, it's like psychotherapy.net. I think it's psychotherapy.net. And it'll just explain like what an emotional flashback is, and there are some different scenarios that you can read about within the context of like, finding out what an emotional flashback is. Am I experiencing an emotional flashback? What does that look like? What does it feel like in my body? How can I identify an emotional flashback? Especially if this is an emotional flashback that I'm experiencing present day, and it's from abuse from someone who is extremely predatory or, quote unquote psychopathic, someone that, like we talked about last week, in Jackson McKenzie's book Psychopath Free. And that abuse happened because a predator or someone who was toxic was manipulative or sort of lured you into a relationship, or you found yourself in a relationship with someone who was very toxic and predatory. And maybe that relationship is from a long time ago, but here you are present day experiencing flashbacks. And you're wondering why, and how can I manage those, and how can I stop those? And some of you are really big fans, as am I, of Richard Grannon, and he has a free course somewhere online, and it's called How to Stop an Emotional Flashback. I think it's how to stop an emotional flashback.com or something. I think is honestly what it is. Or maybe you go to like spartanlifecoach.com and you just do a keyword search for emotional flashbacks, and it's really helpful. And then there's a really good course that he does. I attended a seminar of his. Was it last year? I think it was last year. It was about a year ago, and it was in San Diego, and it was a live seminar that he did on the inner critic and the role of the inner critic in the midst of emotional flashbacks. And if you have been in a relationship with someone who's been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, perhaps it was your parents, a sibling, a boss, a coworker, a friend, a romantic partner, or someone who is exhibiting psychopathic tendencies, someone who's very narcissistic, someone who is sadistic, someone who's very cunning and calculating and Machiavellian, someone you've identified as being perhaps in the dark triad, or they have dark triad traits. You can Google the term dark triad if you're wondering what that is. All of these things can cause us to experience a phenomena called an emotional flashback. And this community of ours has been getting together for about 5 years now. We show up every week, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, every Monday. And those are times that are being quoted to you in the USA. If you are in Australia, then it's already Tuesday. And if you're in the UK, it's like at 2 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. But regardless of where you are in the world, emotional flashbacks and trauma are not they're not a respecter of persons. You could be from any geographical location, any socioeconomic group, You can be anywhere experiencing any type of success or or lack thereof, any type of health or lack thereof, and yet boom, you can find yourself in the midst of what Pete Walker has coined emotional flashbacks. You can be experiencing that. And then so for those of you who are familiar with the work that we're doing here, I started a foundation, right? And very special thank you, by the way, to Shannon, who is here, and she's posting our guidelines in the chat box, and she's welcoming everyone. And to each and every one of you who show up here all the time, week after week after week, and some of you have been with us now for 5 years, and just I want to say thank you. But thank you to Shannon. Thank you to all the Blue Wrench crew, all the people who are moderators, John Harvey, Hunter, anyone who is here early. They show up early and they're just here hanging out. Hello to Jeffrey and Francesca and Tabby Ba and Poppy. So good to see you, Poppy, and thank you to Poppy, who's always here week after week after week, and she volunteers and just gives of herself in so many ways. And we just love you, Poppy, and we're so grateful for you. Welcome to Anne and Shanna and Pixie Painter, and to Gadir, and to I Love Me, XOXO. Welcome to, did I say Shanna? Shanna, Tabby Bot, Ann, Jeffrey, John. I feel like I'm missing someone. I feel like I'm missing someone. Maybe I'm not. Who am I missing? I'm looking. I'm looking. I'm happy to see each and every one of you. You guys are so awesome. So there are about 20 or 30 of us here now. So yeah, if that's you, emotional flashbacks, toxic people, they're not a respecter of persons. They're just not. They can happen at any time. They can happen to anyone. And here's a link to an article. I'm going to put it in the chat box. This is an article that is very, very helpful. We're also going to talk about the book Psychopath Free, again, by Jackson McKenzie, which we referred to last week. And also, here is a link to several articles written by one of our staff writers. You'll see articles there that are written. Hi, Jana. Hey, I'm so happy that you're here. Welcome, welcome. So there, if you go to the link, the link here to CPTSD Foundation's blog, you will find a ton of articles, several articles, all written on the topic of emotional flashbacks, because that was we have, I think, we have several articles on emotional flashbacks there, and it just talks about what are they, and how do we manage them? How can we feel better? And again, I don't have the link to Richard Grannon's course. I really need to have a link to that. Let me see if I can find it somewhere. Welcome to Cheryl. So happy to see you, Cheryl. And you're very welcome, Gianna. Thank you for being here. And so, managing these emotional flashbacks and being able to heal and understanding the role of the inner critic, the role that the inner critic plays in these emotional flashbacks. And it can be so exhausting, but I want you to know you're not alone, first of all. And if this is your very first time stumbling on this channel, we have a lot of longer videos where we're here live and we're hanging out as a community. And if you love shorter videos and longer videos are not your cup of tea, that's cool. That's cool, no problem. There are hundreds and thousands of YouTubers that do shorter videos. Katie Morton is one of them. Dr. Todd Grande, he handles, his goal is to erase the stigma of mental illness and mental health topics by approaching everything from a scientific approach. Katie Morton is really great at providing support. She's a licensed therapist who does YouTube videos. There's also Angie Atkinson. She talks about a lot about healing from narcissistic abuse. There's Meredith Miller, who runs a channel called Inner Integration. There's Dr. Craig Malkin, who approaches everything just from a scientific perspective and has some really great points as well, and just support, in the community of people who are healing from those who are toxic and predatory and psychopathic or diagnosed or undiagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. And it's a sad thing that we're dealing with all of this. Lisa A. Romano, she's a life coach and she has a great YouTube channel. Also, Kim Saeed, Kim, Kimsaeed. She has a YouTube channel, lots of really, really great videos there. There's another gal, Shahida Arabi, who has written a lot of really wonderful books. She's known online as Self-Care Haven. In fact, there's this one particular blog post of Shahida's that has been very helpful in our community. Here you go. It's a link to Shahida's blog post on affirmations. And, she does some really wonderful work on helping us to craft our own affirmations and in a way that feels safe and true to us. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's just wonderful. Poppy says Lisa Romano is awesome. Jinx, great minds think alike for sure. Missy and Gianna are both asking about Ross Rosenberg and the human magnet syndrome. I am not very knowledgeable about his work. I don't know. I don't have enough information about his work. I haven't studied it. But I would be willing to look into that if that's something that you would like me to do. But I can't speak to it because I'm just not 100%. I don't really know. So I'll just continue to refer people that I do know, or that I have consumed their content. So, but I think it's important just for all of us to know that we're not alone. Even though it's a very isolating thing, living with CPTSD symptoms can be very, very, very isolating. And then also, if you are in an intimate partner relationship and your partner is looking for information on how to take better care of themselves or understand what it is that you're going through, you being the survivor and your partner being someone who is perhaps not a survivor of complex trauma or not a survivor of abuse, then there is a good friend of ours. Her name is Heather Tuba, and that's heathertuba.com. Let me see, heathertuba.com. I think it's HTTPS. She has a ton of amazing resources for partners of complex trauma survivors. So if you are listening to this on any other day besides Monday, July 15th, 2019, go ahead and click on the button that says live chat, and then you can go through and you can look at the chat box as you're listening to this video, and you'll see the different links that we are putting in the chat box as resources for you. And then also Poppy and Shannon have put links to resources that are crisis support, since YouTube is never a place for crisis support and I can never provide crisis support. I'm simply here to share information from just a peer-based perspective and a lived experience perspective. And I just provide this safe space for everybody to come together once a week, which we've been doing for almost 5 years, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, every Monday, and almost every Monday. I mean, I've been sick occasionally and so forth. So, yeah, like that's what we're here for, and that's what we're doing. So there was the book that we talked about last week during our discussion called Psychopath Free. Oops. sorry, I dropped my phone. Psychopath Free from by Jackson McKenzie. And I promised you that I would read you a little bit more about complex PTSD as per Jackson McKenzie in the book Psychopath Free. So you're here on this YouTube channel. I'm presupposing that you are living with CPTSD symptoms because this YouTube channel is called CPTSD Chat. So I am coming at you with information about healing from a relationship with a psychopath because you are here on this channel because you're living with CPTSD symptoms. And so just so you know, that's where I'm coming from. So in Jackson McKenzie's book, Psychopath Free, on page 162, toward the middle and the bottom, he starts a conversation about complex PTSD. And I thought that it would be helpful for me to share that with you, just so you know. And, you know, complex PTSD, for the most part, begins in childhood. There was something that happened with us in childhood, whether it was through words, actions, or withholding of love. We developed some boundary issues with ourselves, boundary issues with others, and somehow, some way, that manifested itself in us getting into a relationship in our adult years with someone who was toxic or abusive as well. Now, it doesn't always begin in childhood, but most of the time it does. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I haven't really met very many people in my life ever who are living with CPTSD symptoms that came from a quote unquote, as per Winnicott, as per Pete Walker, good enough family, like the good enough, healthy enough, safe enough. All your basic needs were met for food, clothing, shelter, love, approval, acceptance, communication, safety. You know, I haven't met anyone living with CPTSD symptoms that experienced all those things that I just mentioned in childhood. So if that's you and you came from a good enough family and with, you know, good enough parents, and you had the perfect childhood with the perfect parents, and you received all the love and affection and safety and shelter and food and clothing and acceptance and approval, and you had very healthy boundaries in childhood. And Missy, for instance, says, I have adult onset CPTSD, diagnosed at age 37. So I don't know if this channel and like the information that I'm sharing will be extremely helpful for you, or if some of it will be like, that doesn't really fit. You know what I mean? So if it doesn't fit, that's cool. Take the best, leave the rest. And, you know, there are tons of YouTubers online that focus on adult interpersonal relationships with toxic people. And I just happen to work with the community of people who were abused as children. And that's just, I'm talking about from a lived experience perspective. Missy says, it only takes one cunning psychopath to destroy you. That's so true. So true. Welcome to Andrew. So happy to see you, Andrew. Hello to anybody else I haven't greeted by name. Yeah, it's great to see you. So a lot of the everything that I talk about is from abuse that began in childhood. So if your childhood was great and you had all the love and approval and affection and kindness you could ever want, need, or imagine in childhood, then again, a lot of the stuff that I share might not resonate with you. But thank you for being here. And if this video ends up being helpful for you, wonderful. And even if it's not helpful, I hope that you will vote for this video, either thumbs up or thumbs down, and that you will either leave a comment in the chat box if you're here live, or if you're watching this on a replay, you'll leave a comment down below after the fact, just letting me know that you were here. And yeah, so I'm going to read from Jackson McKenzie's book, Psychopath Free, on page 162. And I'm going to share with you what he says about complex PTSD. And I'm hoping this will be helpful for you or for someone you know. So, welcome to Miss Connie. So happy to see you, Connie. So happy to see each and every one of you. High five, Hunter. High five, recovery buddy. Oh, unless that sends you into an emotional flashback. High five in like a safe high five, safe sort of a way. Ooh, Missy says I grew up with a mother with BPD and a sister, and I recently come to understand how that may have contributed to what could be considered abuse. Absolutely, that is abuse. You experienced vicarious trauma or even secondary trauma. Even if you were not abused personally, someone who's personality disordered being raised in that type of a home, diagnosed or undiagnosed, that will definitely harm you, and it will harm your ego boundaries. And if you have damaged ego boundaries, then it will make you susceptible to psychopaths and other predatory people in adulthood, which is what will find you here on this channel. So regardless of what your guys' situation is, I'm very happy you're here. I'll go ahead and read now what Jackson McKenzie has to say. And again, this is starting on page 162. And Jackson McKenzie, the author of Psychopath Free, is talking about complex PTSD. So he says, symptoms of complex PTSD. Now, you all, don't miss this, okay? Don't miss this. What are the symptoms? Ready? Numbness, a feeling of disconnect, flashbacks, triggering memories, aversion to love and sex, and there are, he says there are two yous, like there's the you that you present to everybody else, and then there's the you that is just the you that you know, and then also isolation. So here we go. He says, once you've felt all the emotions you needed to feel, your spirit will be left broken and exhausted. Because when all is said and done, you know you can't remain angry and depressed forever. Now, mind you, this the chapter I'm reading is exposing a psychopath, right? That's part of it. And it's talking about when empathic people self-destruct after coming in contact with a psychopath. And it talks about all the delayed emotions like the rage and the depression and you know, how we have a heightened understanding of evil, and our empathy, you know, can harm us, and it becomes completely destabilizing. So and then, you know, just the abuse cycle. And so like a lot of us find ourselves like, are we toxic ourselves because we've experienced this? But remember, he's talking in the context of this particular section I'm reading on complex PTSD. He's talking about grief and all these things that we've experienced because of a psychopath, okay? So he says, once you've felt all the emotions you needed to feel, your spirit will be left broken, exhausted. Because when all is said and done, you know you can't remain angry and depressed forever. There comes a point when it's no longer healthy venting. It's just addictive rumination. You know you'll never get back together with this abusive person, and you understand that you cannot change the past. So what comes next? How do you go back to your daily life, learning to cope with the abuse you suffered? How do you enjoy each day without the excessive flattery and approval that you'd grown accustomed to? Something about the world just seems different now. It's lifeless, dull, hopeless. You find that the most obscure triggers set you off. You're unable to enjoy a date or some time with an old friend. You're on high alert the entire time, constantly looking out for manipulation and red flags. The slightest jokes will offend you. The feeling of dread in your heart never seems to go away, warning you that anyone and everyone could be out to hurt you. And then, after you spend time with others, you overanalyze the experience and you come up with a list of reasons that this person shouldn't be in your life anymore. And then you feel awful for thinking those things, and you feel guilty and ashamed that you could be so disloyal. Your opinions of others will oscillate between positive and negative, just like they did for the psychopath. You're now applying the horror you experienced to every aspect of your life, even though the psychopath has been gone for quite some time. Contrary to popular belief, you do not need to be a war veteran or a kidnap victim to suffer from PTSD. Your current situation fits every one of the criteria for this particular disorder, complex PTSD. Number one, exposure to a traumatic event. Yes, relationship abuse from someone you love is traumatic and life altering. Number two, persistent re experiencing. Yes, the mean and sweet cycle you were repeatedly subjected to in their abuse. Number three, persistent avoidance and emotional numbing. Yes, this is the coping mechanism you adopted to excuse their behavior. Number four, persistent symptoms of increased arousal, not present before. Yes, you begin to feel these during the delayed emotions stage, ultimately manifesting as anxiety and fear. Now, keep in mind here on number four, let's just pause. When he talks about increased arousal that you had not experienced before, it doesn't mean arousal in the pop culture sort of layman's term that we use the word arousal, like sexual arousal. Arousal is a psychological term like hyper arousal, meaning that you're emotionally dysregulated and you're feeling very anxious and very fearful and hypervigilant, or hypo-arousal, which is when you're very numb and detached and dissociated. So that's how he's using the word arousal in that sentence. So moving on, number five, now we're talking about complex PTSD here. Number five, duration of symptoms for more than 1 month. Yes, most survivors will require anywhere from 12 to 24 months of recovery before they begin to trust and love again. Number six, significant impairment. You tell me, how do you feel right about now? I'd say impaired is an understatement. As you come to understand that your brain chemicals were altered by this experience you had with the psychopath, you should feel comfortable seeking out professional help from those who know how to combat this debilitating obstacle in the healing process. There's no shame in mental illness. All you need to worry about is finding the right help for you. And you all know, like I tell you, that I represent 1/7 billionth of the population, right? There are 7 billion different healing journeys, and I am sharing one of them because I'm only one of the 7 billion people on the planet. So my way that what works for me may not work for you, right? So again, there's no shame in mental illness. All you need to worry about is finding the right help for you. And what's right for me is not always going to be right for you. Jackson McKinsey goes on to say, I personally had a great experience working with a therapist who specialized in relationship abuse. My time with her was life-changing, and she's responsible for so much of the peace I feel now. Now, keep in mind, just like anything else, there are also bad helping professionals out there. If you do choose to speak with someone, remember you have every right to like or dislike them. There are going to be so many professionals to choose from, so do not settle for someone unless you feel 100% satisfied. Trust your intuition when it comes to finding the perfect match. So here is a section that he's talking about. It's called Truth Triumphs, okay? And this is for those of us who have experienced abuse in adulthood in addition to abuse in childhood. Okay? So he says those who have encountered a psychopath, sociopath, or narcissist in adulthood often feel as if they had been touched by pure evil, haunted by a constant anxiety, self-doubt, and lingering darkness that cannot quite be explained. It feels as if your life force has been drained away and you become numb to the things that once made you happy. People without conscience have this effect on empathetic beings. The reaction between soulful and soulless is life altering. Ultimately, it becomes one of the most important experiences you could imagine. You begin to see the world as it truly is and yourself as you truly are. Your energy slowly returns, and because your spirit generates this power from within, your spirit cannot be broken. So again, the truth triumphs. So he talks a little bit about here about, how we get a do-over. Like we don't have to just accept the abuse that we've received from psychopathic people or someone who's predatory and toxic. And we don't just have to accept the fact that we're living with emotional flashbacks and that we may not ever heal from them. It is possible to heal, to stop emotional flashbacks, to work on, the role of the inner critic that's going on inside your head. And it is possible to learn about mental toughness and resilience. And it is possible, believe it or not, it is possible to have a do-over in life. Welcome to Tracy, and welcome to JJ, and welcome to, I missed someone. I know I did. I already said hello to Andrew. I must have missed someone. Hey Diane. So happy to see you. I feel like I missed somebody. Well, welcome to each and every one of you, even those I may not have greeted by name. So what Jackson McKenzie says in his book called Psychopath Free on the bottom of page 165, he talks about the do-over. And I think it's important for those of us who are healing from abuse from someone who's psychopathic or someone who's predatory or toxic, especially when we're experiencing emotional flashbacks and we get stuck and we're not sure why we feel so hypervigilant and dissociated, and we have these different bouts of feelings of like rage and numbness, and then we have these feelings of despair and hopelessness. And hello to Whitey J. It's good to see you, Whitey J. Thanks for saying hi. Yeah, so I want us to talk about the do-over, because we deserve a do-over, right? You who are here watching this video, you're experiencing emotional flashbacks. You might be struggling right now, even today. And the reason you're having these symptoms is because you were abused either in childhood or adulthood by someone you believe to be living with psychopathic traits, who lines up with the construct of psychopathy, or perhaps someone who was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, maybe they're undiagnosed, or just someone who's just downright predatory and toxic and abusive, and you just don't want to be around them. Maybe it's someone who's narcissistic. I want you to know that there is hope for a do-over. So let's talk about hope for a do-over. So he says here, one of the most common feelings associated with PTSD is powerlessness. Both during and after the abuse, you come to feel powerless to change your situation in any way. You realize that you were charmed, duped, used, and discarded, and there was absolutely nothing you could have done to avoid it. Just when you thought you hit rock bottom, the psychopath came along and took away what little remaining dignity you had. They made sure your behavior was as hysterical and embarrassing as possible. And no matter how terribly they treated you, it always felt like they were winning. Once you realize this was all a game to the other person, this powerlessness begins to feel even more overwhelming. You look back at every instance when you were begging and pleading, now aware that they were silently enjoying your reactions and, let's just say it, enjoying your pain. You recall each time they called you crazy and jealous, and now you're aware that you were right all along. They were actively cheating on you. You think to yourself, if only they would contact me one more time, that way I could be the one to ignore them. This is called a do-over. And I think it's your spirit's way of healing from a completely powerless situation. Your imagination is an incredibly powerful tool that wants nothing more than to make sure your heart stops hurting. So allow yourself to dream. Allow yourself to dream up these do-overs about these opportunities, right? These opportunities to stand up for yourself, right? Allow yourself to dream about the opportunities to stand up for yourself. And again, it is your spirit's way of healing from a completely powerless situation. Okay? The annoying part of your brain might try to remind you that none of the dreaming up of these do-overs of standing up for yourself is real. But imagination is every bit as real as we decide it is. Instead of begging and pleading, maybe you laughed at their nasty criticisms. Instead of apologizing profusely to the psychopath or the abuser, maybe you find yourself demanding an apology from them. Instead of crying when they gave you the silent treatment, maybe you gave that silence right back to them. Instead of being dumped in the most insensitive and unimaginable way possible, maybe you were the one to walk out the door and never speak to them again. Basically, you undo all the parts in which they brought you to your knees. You do not allow them the satisfaction of calmly watching while you frantically scramble around for them. Instead, in your do-over, with your newfound knowledge of psychopathy, you become the calm one and you beat them at all of their own games. Not only is this imaginary process we're talking about called the do-over actually much healthier than reliving the same trauma over and over again, you use your imagination to absorb the abuse and romanticize non-existent good qualities in them during the devaluation. Now, let's not miss this, you guys. Our imagination is so, 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 so powerful that just as we're all sitting here right now and we're imagining the imaginary do-over, like how we get to be the strong one and we get to be the calm one and we get to be the one that walks away and we get to be the one that doesn't get hurt anymore, right? You know what happened, right? What happened during our abuse, especially if this is abuse in adulthood by a psychopath or a narcissist or someone who's predatory or toxic or just abusive and wrong in any way, right? Narcissistic, whatever it is. We used our imagination to absorb. Oops, my computer just went out. Uh-oh, are y'all still there? Uh-oh, I think I lost you all. Something happened with my computer. It just blinked out. Can y'all still hear me? Let me know in the chat box if you can still hear me. I was on a roll too. Oop. Oh, good. Okay. Okay, so not only, right? Not only is it natural for us to imagine all of these different fantasies after an abusive relationship, it's actually much healthier than reliving the same trauma over and over and over again. When we were being abused, we used our imagination to absorb their abuse and romanticized non-existent good qualities in them during the devaluation stage. Like, think about it. We really did. Because we needed to find a way to not be in pain. Like, that's just our brain's way of protecting us. So Jackson McKenzie goes on to say, so why in the world shouldn't you be allowed to use that same imagination to work through all of this pain? With time, you will come to see that the frantic, broken, anxious, unhinged version of you was nothing to be ashamed of. You were simply a kind-hearted person reacting to a very unkind situation. Those outbursts and behaviors were the result of your most admirable qualities being exploited and eroded. And then Jackson goes on to say, it took me quite some time to come to this conclusion, but when I look back on my old mess of a self, I actually feel a strange sort of admiration for that person. He was doing everything he could with an impossible situation, and I will always respect him for that. And then he goes on to say, of course, a part of me would like to go back in time and save him from it all, but I don't think that that do-over would be particularly helpful to either of us. So I think it's really wonderful to see how empowering his writing is. His writing comes at you and it points out the things that not a lot of people talk about, right? I mean, he brings light, he sheds light on, what happens after the abuse from the psychopath or the predatory person or the toxic person. He talks about how we pour all of our energy, into super sleuthing and researching and validation and healing and then he talks about embarrassment, right? The ugly stages of grief. He talks about cognitive dissonance and how painful that is. So if you want, I can continue reading this and sharing this with you because I do feel this is very helpful and empowering for all of us. What do you think, you all? Hey, James. Okay, so Hunter says, keep reading. James says, yes. Anne says, read. Shanna says, sounds good, Athena. YDJ says, this is really helpful. Please continue. JJ says, please do. Jeffrey says, I love it. More, more, more. You all are so wonderful. So here we go. Let's talk about after the psychopathic experience, right? You who are here listening to this video, you clicked on it because we're talking about emotional flashbacks, present day. You're struggling present day as a result of being in an abusive relationship from someone who you believe lines up with the construct of psychopathy, or someone who's predatory or toxic or narcissistic or whatever, like whatever it is. So here we go. We're going to talk about after the psychopathic experience, okay? So Jackson McKenzie, and this is in the book Psychopath Free, and I'm at the bottom of page 167. He says, after the psychopathic experience, life seems to stand still for a while. You pour all of your energy into research, validation, and healing. The world around you stops while you work to regain a sense of self. But inevitably, life goes on. And such being the case, painful things continue to happen. Whether it be death of a friend or family member, another breakup, a loss of a beloved pet, an illness, or anything else, you will experience pain. But after the psychopath, it's different. You find yourself always going back to this. I could have coped with this so much better if that psychopath thing had never happened. You burden yourself with more misery, finding that each challenge seems to lead you back to the toxic, abusive relationship, even if it's totally unrelated. This is especially true for breakups, where you had a glimmer of hope and joy with someone else, an experience that finally made you forget about the psychopath. And once that's gone, the feelings come rushing back like a second wave of identity erosion, even though the psychopath is long gone. I don't believe these feelings actually have anything to do with the psychopath. Your spirit has transformed, becoming more sensitive, more vulnerable to sadness. You might initially interpret this as a bad thing because it makes you feel weak when you need strength the most. But this negative energy you're feeling has a bigger and more important purpose. Instead of digging through old memories, allow yourself to let go. Take a deep breath. Cry as much as you want. Send out waves of loving energy to heal where it is needed, or to touch what is already gone. You will find yourself exhausted, but also at peace, connected to something deeper than yourself. Dealing with grief will never be the same again, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. It only feels bad at first because you have no idea where to direct all these new and overwhelming emotions. So go back to what feels familiar when you felt the absolute worst. but you soon learn ways to deal with painful emotions and direct them in a more healthy way. Here's another thing to keep in mind. When you're feeling down, how many other things have become easier to cope with because of this whole experience? Most complex trauma survivors find better friendships, healthier relationships, self respect, boundaries, and a broader connection with humanity. Negativity can work like a rolling snowball sometimes, and it's important to remember how far you've come. Give yourself some credit for pulling yourself out of the ashes. You survived the darkness. You do not need to fear it anymore. And then he goes on to talk about embarrassment, which I'm probably going to touch on briefly right now, because honestly, like a lot of people don't talk about the embarrassment, and there are not enough videos out there and informational resources out there on cognitive dissonance and how often it comes back, because that's one of those things that we wish was a one and done, and it's just not. So I'm going to go on, and I'm going to continue reading if that's okay with you. So there's a lot of wonderful stuff going on in the chat box here. Oh, James says, hello, Athena. I'm normally here, but I rarely comment. I have you in my earbuds during workout. Yay! Oh, I'm so glad. That's amazing. Thank you for letting me know that, James. I never would have known that. That made my whole day. Thank you so much. Well, hello there to Jana and Shanna and Andrew and Farrell and Francesca. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to continue to read. So he talks about embarrassment. This is from Jackson McKenzie, and I'm on the middle to bottom of page 169 in the book Psychopath Free. So he says, after making it through the early, ugly stages of grief, many victims feel ashamed of themselves and the relationship aftermath. They cannot believe they sank so low, actually begging another human being for acceptance and approval. It feels like an insult to your soul, and rightfully so. To make matters worse, you probably spent a lot of time defending yourself to anyone who would listen, waging imaginary arguments and trying to explain your changed position about the relationship, telling others that they weren't actually the perfect partner you once claimed them to be, but instead an abusive psychopath. Unknowingly, survivors often continue to seek approval from external sources long after the relationship is ended. It's a habit that you picked up after placing all of your self-worth in the psychopath's oscillating opinions. When you continue these patterns with others, you might end up with some embarrassing memories, especially if you had always prided yourself on being independent and positive. It's sort of like a big dark cloud over your otherwise good track record. Your life became a bag of marbles, spilling all over the floor. Your thoughts and emotions scattered everywhere, making it impossible to find clarity and truth. Then, slowly, over the course of many months, you began putting the marbles back into the bag. The longer you did this, the more you started to understand what really happened and how your behavior might have come across to others. But don't worry about this anymore. Forgive yourself and move on. Everyone else has. Nobody thinks about you as much as you think about you. That might sound rude, but I think it's more humbling than anything else. It's a reminder that everyone fights their own battles every single day, and most people won't even remember the embarrassing thing you said a week ago unless you continually bring it up. Your goal is to focus on the present. There are so many good things coming your way. You will discover more about yourself and this world than you could ever imagine. Because the thing about missing marbles is that you have to search in strange places to find them. And on the topic of like, feeling where he says, where where he says, "Don't worry about this anymore. Just forgive yourself and move on. Everybody else has. Nobody thinks about you as much as you do." That might sound rude, but I think it's more humbling than anything else. It's a reminder that everyone fights their own battles every single day, and most people won't even remember the embarrassing thing you said a week ago unless you continually bring it up. So on that topic, like, have any of you guys ever sort of had like an inside joke with someone? Like, there's kind of like an inside joke that you have with, whether it's one of your adult children or with a friend, or, like, there's something that you could say and nobody else would even know what you're talking about. But like, that person who you have the inside joke with, like, they would for sure, they would know what you were talking about. So I have a couple of these sort of like inside jokes with my son. My son's an adult now. He's 26 years old. He's going to be 27. And hello, Pixie Painter. So good to see you. So he and I had a whole bunch of inside jokes. The primary language spoken in our home growing up for the first 17 years of his life before he left for the military 10 years ago. Over 10 years ago, actually. He left for the military May 23rd, 2010. And here we are. I guess it was 9 years ago, a little over 9 years ago, because here we are in July of 2019. So that's like over 9 years ago. So for the first 17 years of his life, the primary language spoken in our home was movie quotes. Like, if he were to say something to me, I could respond with a movie quote and he would know exactly what I was saying. Or if I asked him a very, very, very serious question, he would scroll through his Rolodex in his head of all the movie quotes that ever were, and he would respond with, facial expressions and body gestures and voice impressions, something that probably from like Breakfast Club or Ferris Bueller's Day Off or Napoleon Dynamite, or even like TV shows, like Zoe 101, or like different cartoons, or SpongeBob SquarePants, or hey, welcome, Angela. Hey, Kira. So happy to see both of you. So I was having dinner with my son and his wife, my daughter-in-law, about 2 months ago after their graduations. And my son said something to me that, well, we were having a very serious discussion. Myself and my daughter-in-law were having a very serious discussion. And then my son sort of interrupted our very serious discussion talking about the menu, because we were out to dinner, because he was basically saying, like, this is so depressing. Can we please just move on and like decide what we're going to eat? And so he started talking about the menu, and then I responded with a movie quote. And my heart and my soul was crushed because he didn't remember the movie quote. Like, I could tell that he kind of remembered it. And then he said, did you just quote the such and such movie? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, Mom, the world has moved on. And my heart was crushed, you guys. My heart was so, 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 so crushed. So I want you to know that my son never would have known that I was like stuck in the year 2009, which was the greatest year of my life, because I was being a mom and I was driving my son everywhere and I was teaching him how to drive, and I was involved with everything. And he was the homecoming king, and he graduated with honors, and he was just like, it was just the most exciting time of my life. Like, it was just amazing. And so this particular movie was a movie that we watched somewhere right around that time of 2009. And so I was so crushed that he's like, Mom, like, the world has moved on. Like, nobody's quoting that movie anymore. And I'm reminded of what Jackson McKenzie says in his book. Like no one is going to remember the embarrassing thing you said a week ago unless you continually bring it up. Like, what my son said to me was something that I could probably write an entire book about. And that is, the whole world has moved on. Mom, the world has moved on. Nobody cares about what you're talking about anymore. And the same thing goes for the embarrassing things we did when we were healing from these emotional, perhaps we just had complete meltdowns, or we were completely frozen in time due to an emotional flashback. That's something happening present day, something that we really is very painful and frustrating and scary for us, right? It's like anxiety inducing, and it causes us to be in fear and hypervigilance. And all of it is because we're healing from abuse from someone who we believe is a psychopath, or perhaps they're diagnosed or undiagnosed antisocial personality disorder, also known as sociopath, or someone who's just predatory and toxic or narcissistic or just plain abusive and rude and horrible, right? Well, we've done some crazy things. We've done some crazy things and said some crazy things and thought some crazy things. And we've acted in some really crazy ways as a result of these emotional flashbacks. But I'm here to tell you what my son told me 2 months ago. The world has moved on. Who cares? You were responding in a way that was understandable when faced with a situation which lacks all understanding. You were responding naturally to a completely unnatural experience. You were responding in a very human way in the face of abuse from someone who was being anything but humane. So please know that while it is painful and frustrating and it's heart-wrenching and it can be very embarrassing to admit that we were sort of powerless and sort of duped and played for a fool, and we endured all these horrible things by these predatory, toxic people, just know that we were responding in the only way that we knew how. Okay? We were responding the only way we knew how. And in the famous words of my son, maybe not so famous, but I'm sure that the sentiment is there in a lot of ways out there, the world has moved on. The world has moved on. No one is going to judge me or shame me for being completely destroyed and upset and in pain and frustrated and devastated and heartbroken. No one's going to shame me and rub my nose in that. Like, I was responding in a way. Yeah, yes, Jeffrey says I was responding naturally to a very unnatural situation. Exactly. So, oh yes, we do have a Facebook page. Yay! It's fb.com/CPTSD Foundation. Here, let me help you. I can do it. Here we go. Here you go. We're gonna have a Facebook group, I think, at some point. I was talking with Poppy about it. Here it is. https://fb.com/CPTSD foundation.org. Oops, nope, I lied. It's not cptsdfoundation.org. How do I? Hold on. I lied. Let me just delete this. Hold on. Remove. Here, let's try this one more time. Here is our Facebook page. It would mean a lot to me if you decided to like our Facebook page. And then there are groups on there that you can join. Some of them are paid groups. There's a group called Daily Recovery Support. It's $50 a month because you have access to our daily calls. We have conversations like these 365 days a year, and that's why it costs $50 a month. But there's a book club group, and that's for all of our book club members. I believe that's only $5 a month. There's a whole bunch of free groups. And you'll be taken to our website to fill out a page, fill out some questions about, so we can put you in like the group that you want to be in. And then I'm starting this thing up, I think like in September, called the Daily 30, and it's going to be a group I'm probably gonna do it here on YouTube or on YouNow, where we do like art journaling for 30 minutes a day. But I'm only gonna like do like a brief synopsis on the videos here on the YouTube channel of like a 5-minute video, not 30 minutes. And then over in the group, we'll do the 30 minutes a day. 30 minutes a day, or we'll post the 30-minute videos. It'll be kind of like a daily 30 minutes that you set aside to do journaling or art journaling, or just some sort of something reflective that will help us to heal CPTSD symptoms and just heal from complex trauma, especially as it pertains to emotional flashbacks and emotional flashbacks that are brought on by abuse that we endured from very toxic and predatory people. So yeah. You know what, Shanna? It's okay. Shanna's saying everybody has Facebook. I don't do Facebook. Not everybody loves Facebook, and that's fine. I do it. I do Facebook, Shanna. I agree. Shanna says it's depressing because everybody has pictures of family and friends, and I don't have either right now. Yeah. No, I get it. I totally get it. And I do Facebook because that's where the world is located, and I want to make sure that I reach as many people as possible with a message of hope and healing. But Shanna, I don't know if it's feasible for you or not. You could fill out a scholarship application if it's not feasible for you. But we have a community on a private server through CPTSDfoundation.org, Shanna, and it's not on Facebook. It's on my private server. And it's a wonderful, wonderful place where, there are boundaries and guidelines, and it's a zero tolerance policy. It's a lot like this, but it's safer because it's not on, YouTube or Facebook or whatever. It's on my private server. So yeah. I mean, I don't know if that helps, Shanna, if that's something that would be helpful for you, but it's private, and I want to invite you. And I'm not just inviting Shanna. I'm inviting all of you. So, Shanna, here you go. Here, go here, Shanna. Here's how you get there. Oops, S. Let's see. Go there, Shanna. Click on the link, and up at the top somewhere, you'll see something about like daily calls, right? If you click on daily calls, I have it all set up. My team is amazing. It's amazing. And we have a community, and I have a few people, Shanna, who don't do social media. They don't do YouTube. They don't do Facebook. They don't do Twitter. They don't do Pinterest. They don't do LinkedIn. They don't do Instagram. They don't do any of that. And, granted, they're my demographic that's like my age. They're in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and it's just not their cup of tea. But we have a whole area. It's a members area where we all share our light bulb moments. And, all it takes is one light bulb moment to really just change our perspective, and it heads us in a different direction. And honestly, Shanna, Shanna, a lot of the people you see here on Mondays are a lot of our community members over where the link I just shared with you for the daily calls. So anyway, all of you are invited. We do calls like this 365 days a year on my private server at cptsdfoundation.org. You're all invited. If you can't afford it, sign up for a scholarship, and we'll work it out. We'll make it happen. I want everybody to receive the support they deserve. So, oh my gosh, you're so welcome, Shanna. You're so welcome. Yeah, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you asked. So, you all, here we go. I'm going to wrap it up. We're on next week, we're going to talk about cognitive dissonance when healing from a relationship with a toxic person and a psychopath. And we're at the bottom of page 170 of Jackson Mackenzie's book called Psychopath Free. And yeah, we also have a healing book club if anyone's interested. I think it's only $5 a month. And that goes, the book club funds the scholarships. So people who cannot, it can't load the page. Oh, you know why? Shanna, you know why you can't load the page? Because I don't even know how to spell my own websites. Here, hold on. Let me just pull it up for you. Pull it up for you. Let me just get it so you can see it. Oh my gosh, I'm such a dork. So yeah, we're going to talk about cognitive dissonance. It's going to be really helpful and awesome. Shanna, here, there. It's because I don't know how to spell my own website. Oh, good night, Pixie Painter. Good night, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and end. So next week, we're going to talk about cognitive dissonance. And so this week, we talked about emotional flashbacks. Next week, we're going to talk about cognitive dissonance that is happening present day from prior abuse with someone who is psychopathic or predatory or toxic. And hey, Kelly Hansen. Nice to see you. Oh, JJ, that's okay. Yeah, no, just continue coming every Monday. It's always free to be here. Yeah. Good night, Tabby Ba. Good night, Kira. Good night, John Harvey. Good night, Kelly. Good night, Shanna. Good night, Jeffrey. Good night, Jana. Good night, Whitey and Gadir. And Andrew and Hunter and Anne and Whitey J and Angela and Jana and Poppy. I know Poppy's driving. Drive safely, Papa. I'm Poppy. Papa. Drive safely, Poppy. And good night to everybody. Good night, Francesca. Oh, Francesca already left a while ago, like 10 minutes ago. Good night to each and every one of you. And if anyone sees Malta, say hi to Malta. I hope all is well. If anyone sees James the Reviver, tell James we hope all is well. I look forward to seeing you all back here next week. We'll talk about cognitive dissonance with, oh, you're so welcome, JJ. Yeah, there's a scholarship application. Like if you're interested in actually like healing and being a part of the community away from social media, you don't have money, like we have we have a scholarship fund, and it's funded by the book club. The book club people come and they pay, and of course I pay out of pocket as well, which I have been doing for like 5 years. But I mean, you know, like seriously. And we have people, just so you know, we have people. Oh my gosh, Shanna. See, Shanna, you're so kind. Seriously. We have people who ask us to charge them for their daily recovery support calls twice so that they can scholarship somebody else in who might not be able to, and it's completely anonymous. Nobody knows who is paying for them, and nobody knows who's receiving a scholarship. Everybody's there. It's level ground. It's level ground. There's no shame. We're all there to just be together and heal. So please, please, please just know, okay? Like there is no shame. If you don't have the money, we'll figure it out. I want you all to have the resources you need. I want you to have the support you need. You deserve to heal, okay? Thank you. Thank you for hitting the like button. I appreciate it so much. Please vote for this video, thumbs up or thumbs down. Thank you for hitting the like button over on Facebook. That's nice of you. It's facebook.com/CPTSD Foundation. Otherwise, I'll just see you all back here next week, every Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Next week on the 22nd of July, we are going to be talking about cognitive dissonance when we're healing from an abusive, from a toxic person. So, and that's free. It's always free to be on YouTube. So we'll see you all later. Thank you so much for being a part of our community, for being in my life, and letting me be in your lives. I appreciate it. And I guess I'll just see you all when I see you. I'll either see you on the daily calls, or I'll see you in a group, or I'll see you here next week. Okay? Good night, everybody.